In alhamdulillah wa salat wa salam ala wa rasulullah. We're continuing with the hadiths from Sahih Muslim. We're in the book of Jihad, and today will be the second lecture from this book. We'll be picking up with the hadiths that speak about the rules regarding the spoils of war and also how the prisoners are treated during wartime. And I want to again specify that as of now, there is no real war going on because, again, in order to be engaging in a war that's done in the way of Allah, you have to adhere to the etiquettes of war, and you have to adhere to the rules and guidelines that Allah has instilled upon us. If you are fighting and you are not abiding by those etiquettes, then Allah is not accepting your struggle. And Allah is not going to help you. Allah is not going to send the angels to fight with you, because Allah is all about what is right, not about what is wrong. And a true battle should be to adhere to Allah's commands, not for your own personal gain or any of that. So now with that said, let's go on to the rules, the hadiths addressing the rules and guidelines that apply to fighting in a war. And again, we want to start off with the spoils of war. This was on the quiz today. Again, what are the spoils of war? I told you guys the answer on the quiz was anything of value that is left over at the end of a battle in which you were victorious. If you overtook a town or a city, a village, and you won the battle, you get the spoils, whatever property, whatever resources, and this includes the women too. Whatever women are there, they become part of your spoils. Let's look at this first hadith. This first hadith says that it's been narrated by Musad ibn Sa'd. He said that he heard his father say 4 verses of the Quran were revealed about me. He said, because I had found a sword among the spoils of war after one of the battles, and that sword was brought to the Prophet, and my father said, O Prophet of Allah, give it to me. And the Prophet said, no, put it over there. And then my father stood up, and again the Prophet said, put it where you got it from. And then my father said, oh Prophet, can I have it? Give it to me. Shall I be treated like one who has no share in the spoils of war? And the Prophet again told my father, no, put it over there where you got it. And that's when Allah then sent down the verse of the Quran saying, if they ask you about the spoils of war, tell them the spoils of war are for Allah and the messenger. So, the verses where Allah made it lawful for us Muslims to take the spoils of war were sent down as a result of what happened with this companion. Okay? And this was after, I think, the battle of, Badr. Okay? The next hadith, Ibn Umar states that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to give from the spoils of war to the small troops that he would send on expeditions, and he would give them something more than the due share of each fighter in a large group. And one fifth of the total spoils was to be reserved for Allah and the Prophet. Now, you guys heard me tell you many times that the welfare system was created by the Muslims. And this is why I say that. Because whenever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would get into have a battle, one fifth of the spoils of that battle would be reserved for him and Allah, meaning he would take that and make that part of the treasury. And that one fifth would be part of the treasury and would go to help those women who had no husbands. They would give them money each month for those, or each week for those women who had no husbands and all like that. So that's why I say Islam, the welfare system began in Islam, with Islam. So, and that's how it is, one fifth, even under the caliphate of Abu Bakr, the caliphate of Umar, Uthman, Ali, and everyone else, whenever they would be victorious in a war, they would take one fifth of the spoils and reserve it for the treasury. And that money would go to help those needy Muslims, those women who had no husbands, those children who were orphans, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So that's about the spoils of war. Also, Islam also teaches that if a fighter kills someone while fighting in the battle, that person he kills belongings can go to him as part of his spoils. And this is based on the following hadith, whereas one of the companions tells us that he was standing in the battle array on the day of Badr, during the battle of Badr, and he could look to his right and left, and he found amongst himself two boys, two young teenage boys from amongst the Ansar, and he said, oh my God, I'm getting ready to fight against the Quraysh, and I have on my right and my left side only two kids to fight alongside me. And he was thinking how he wished he had some older, stronger men to fight beside him. And so one of the kids happened to see him looking at him and looked up and said, hey, uncle, can you tell me which one of those men of the Quraysh is Abu Jahl? He said, why do you want to know? He said, because I heard that Abu Jahl was the one who abuses the Prophet the most. I heard that when the Prophet lived in Mecca and when he received the call to prophethood, Abu Jahl was the one who tortured him and abused him the most. He said, if I know who he is, I'm going to kill him. I swear by Allah that I will kill that man for what he did to our prophet. Now, this was a young teenage kid. So the man didn't take the kid serious. He said, okay, I'll show you who he is. So he said, he pointed out Abu Jahl. He said, that man there on that camel over there, that's Abu Jahl. He said, do you see him? And as soon as he pointed Abu Jahl out, those two boys ran out. They broke the battle array and ran out on the battlefield, attacking Abu Jahl with their swords until they killed him. And everybody was shocked. These two little teenage kids, they ran out there and attacked him until he was killed. And when they came back to the Prophet, they told him, they said, we killed him, O Prophet. We killed Abu Jahl. We killed the man who used to torture you. And the Prophet said, which one of you killed him? And both of them said, I did. The other one said, no, I did. Because they both did. They both attacked him until he fell off his camel and died. They killed him with their swords. So the Prophet asked them, he said, do you still have the blood from him on your sword? They said, no. But he looked at their swords and he said, but both of you killed him. He said, well, I tell you what. He said, do you still have the blood on your swords? They said, yes, we do. They said, we just killed him. We still got the blood on our swords. So the Prophet looked at their swords and said, wow, y'all did kill him. He said, well, guess what? Since you both killed Abu Jahl, he said, then all his belongings will go to you too. And those two boys were Mu'ad ibn Amir ibn Joth and Mu'ad ibn Afra. So here we can see, from that hadith, first of all, you see how Allah has placed the Ansar in such high status. These two young children did not even know the Prophet well. He migrated to Medina. The Ansar took the Prophet in. They swore allegiance to him. Even though these two kids did not know him well, they loved the Prophet enough that they wanted to seek revenge for him against the man who tortured him and abused him the most. And they did. And they were not even blood related to the Prophet. But they did it because of their love for him and their love for Allah. That's why Allah says, until you love the Ansar, you will never be a true believer. Because the Ansar loved Allah and they loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But and so you learn from this hadith too, that when fighting in a battle, if you are the one who kills a person, you are entitled to their belongings, their spoils, if you want. Okay. And then we have another hadith here where another companion tells us that he joined the expedition that marched under Zayd ibn Haritha to Muta, and he received reinforcements from Yemen. And he said during that battle, the Prophet had decided in favor of giving the war booty again to the person who had killed one of the leaders of that contingent. Okay, so the fighter who happens to kill a person has the first rights to their spoils. Okay, that's one of the rules that Islam put into effect. And then this brings us to the next hadith. And I'm going to explain this again like I did before class. In Islam, a man is allowed to have 4 wives, no more than 4 wives. But also he can have as many right-hand possessions as he wants. A lot of people ask, what is a right-hand possession? A right-hand possession, these are women who are captured after a war. Any women that are remaining after a war, they become the captures of the people who are victorious. And this has always been the case even before Islam. Whenever the English or French or whoever fought and they were victorious, the women were taken as prisoners of war and divided up amongst the men. So that's always been the case since the beginning of time. But what Islam did was it brought about rules. When you're fighting a war and any women that are taken prisoner, they become your property, but they have rights over you. You have to treat them as you would your wives in regards to feeding them and clothing them. You have to take care of these women. Any children that you have from these women, they are your children. You have to provide for them, maintain them, and they are also able to inherit from you. So a lot of people read about this in the Quran. They say, oh, your religion is cruel. No. Prisoners of war existed before Islam. Women were always right-hand possessions, even before Islam. It's just that the other cultures, the other people, the Romans, the Persians, the English, the French, they didn't give these women any rights. These women became slaves to their men, but not so in Islam. These women are not slaves. These women have to be provided for. They have to be maintained just like your wives. The only difference is a man doesn't have to be equal in his time spent with them. And also, they are not entitled to their own home. That's the only 2 differences. What are the 2 differences? Number 1, the right-hand possession does not have to have equal time. And the other difference is she does not have to have her own home. In other words, your right hand possessions can live together in the same house. Whereas every other your wives are have to have their separate homes unless they say that they don't mind. Okay? So right hand possessions existed before Islam, but Islam gave rules in effect. There are no right hand possessions today because we are not fighting. There is no caliphate. When the Mahdi comes, he will be the caliph. The next caliph will be the Mahdi. And when the Mahdi comes, we will be fighting throughout the entire earth. And then women will again become right hand possessions. And if a woman is taken as a right hand possession, they can distribute her amongst the men, even if she was married. It doesn't matter. She no longer is married. She's now the prop belonging to whoever the victorious person is. That's why Allah says, try to make peace. War is not a nice thing, guys. There's nothing nice. That's why the prophet said, do not wish to encounter. Do not desire to encounter, to fight. Instead, try to negotiate peace because it's not a pretty thing. People are going to be killed. The women are going to be taken as captures and divided up. They'll be missing their husbands and all of that. But the purpose of it is so that for them to be maintained. You don't want women sitting around in the streets, crying because they lost their husbands and their sons and no one's taking care of them. So when these women are divided up amongst the men as spoils of war, those men have to provide and maintain those women with dignity and respect. He just doesn't have to be equal with his time with them, nor do they have to have their separate homes. They can live together. Okay? That's where the Persians came with harems. When the Persians embraced Islam, and as they would conquer the different lands that they fought against, they would take their women who were prisoners of war, and they'd all be in the same dwelling called a harem. 100 women. You would read about some men having 100 wives. Those are not wives. Those are right-hand possessions. They all live in their own one building together, whereas the wives lived in separate dwellings. That's the harem. Those are the right-hand possessions. Okay, so now having explained that, let's look at this hadith here. Even though men are allowed to take the women as prisoners of war and make them their right-hand possessions, Islam encourages them to ransom them. That's what the prophet did. Let's look at this hadith. One of the companions tells us, we fought against the Fazara, and Abu Bakr was commander over us. He had been appointed by the prophet. And when we were only an hour's distance from the water of the enemy, Abu Bakr ordered us to attack them. So we made an attack during the last part of the night. And we reached their watering place, and the battle was fought. Some of the enemies were killed, and some were taken prisoners. I saw a group of people that consisted of women and children. I was afraid that they should reach the mountain before me, so I shot an arrow on the ground, preventing them from moving further away from me. And then I rode up to them, and amongst the women was one woman from the tribe of Fazara, and she was wearing a leather coat, and she had with her her daughter, who was one of the most beautiful girls I've ever seen in Arabia. He said, I wanted that girl. I wanted her daughter to be mine. So I went along with them until I was brought before Abu Bakr, and Abu Bakr gave the girl to me. He awarded that girl to me as my prize, as my right-hand possession. And that's what they would do. That's what's done in war. The women are taken and the women are divided up amongst the men. This man wanted that little girl. She wasn't a little girl, but she was a young girl. He wanted her to be his. And Abu Bakr gave him to her. So when they arrived in Medina, he had not yet done anything to her. He had not yet touched her. But when the prophet heard that he had that girl awarded to him as his possession, the prophet asked him, he said, give the girl to me. And he said, oh prophet, I have not disrobed her yet. The prophet said, no, give her to me. He said, may Allah bless your father. He said, give her to me. And so the man gave the girl to the prophet. And what did the prophet do? The prophet surrendered her as ransom for a number of Muslims who had been kept as prisoners at Mecca. So that's what they did. That's what the prophet would do. The prophet encouraged, ransoming the prisoners, not killing them. And if it was women, ransom the women. Because people will want to release Muslims for their wives and their daughters. And this girl came from a good tribe. Everybody knew her tribe. They knew her parents too. That's why this man wanted her for himself. But the prophet knew that her family would want her back. So he said, no, rather than you taking her and making her your right hand possession, give her to me so I can use her to free other Muslims who were taken as prisoners. That's how the prophet did. He always ransomed his prisoners. Is that what's happening today? We got these terrorist groups fighting today, killing people, beheading people, raping people. The prophet didn't do that. He always ransomed his prisoners. He would say, I'll give you your daughter in exchange for the Muslims you have. Here's your family members, your tribal people. I'll give you your tribesmen in exchange for our men. So you learn from this hadith, that it's best if you can ransom, even if it's a beautiful woman like this girl was, beautiful, somebody that you desire more than anything to have as your own. And you can have her because she's a captive of war. It would be better to ransom her to her family in exchange for other prisoners that were Muslims that were prisoners than to keep her for yourself. Okay? Also in Islam during war, we have what is known as fai. What is fai? Fai is property that is taken from the enemy without fighting. This happens during war too. Again, war is not a pretty thing. Allah says he sends war as a means of cleansing the earth of bad people. That's the why Allah allows war to happen. People ask, why does Allah allow war to happen? He said it's a way of cleansing the earth of bad people. Sometimes during war, you can win a battle without even having to fight. And if that happens, the property taken there is known as fai. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if you come to a town that has surrendered without having to fight and you stay there, you have a share that will be in the form of an award of the properties obtained from it. And if a town disobeys Allah and his messenger and actually fights against you, then 1/5 of the spoils seized is for Allah and his prophet, and the rest is for you. So say, for example, the Mahdi is here and we're fighting, and around the world, the Muslims are fighting. Any towns, that they reach peace agreements with, that they didn't have to fight, to get, you're you're entitled to a share of the property there. But remember, 1/5 of it, 1/5 that actually fights against the Muslims, will go towards the Islamic State, the treasury, to take care of those other people, okay, in our society who need money. Okay. Also, we talked before about how when it comes to the laws of inheritance, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "We prophets do not have any heirs. Instead, what we leave behind is to be given in charity." And we talked about this before as Muslims. You know, our prophets do not leave behind any inheritance. Instead, they leave behind their knowledge. They leave behind no heirs. They leave behind their knowledge of Islam. And if they did have any money to leave behind, it would be given in charity. Aisha tells us that when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam died, his wives made up their minds to send Uthman as their spokesperson to ask Abu Bakr if they can have some inheritance. And Aisha reminded them, didn't the prophet say that we prophets do not leave behind any heirs? Instead, if we leave anything of value behind, it is to be given in charity. So the prophets of Allah do not leave behind any heirs. Instead, if they have any money, it's to be given in charity. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Ali was not an heir. And this is important because this is what formed the groups to drop off into Shiitism. After the Prophet had died, people felt that Ali should have been the ruler after him and his heir. There are no heirs. The prophets do not leave behind heirs. If you want an heir, go watch the Korean drama, which I'm sure Sister Norto is glad to see here. Good Korean drama, Heirs. Okay? All right. Also, okay, I'm sorry. Hold on for a second. My video stopped playing on Facebook, and I apologize. Somebody's messaging me on Facebook, and whenever they message on Facebook, guys, it stops the video on Facebook. So I don't know. For those of you on Facebook, I don't know what you guys are gonna do. You might. They can't hear me probably because it says the video was interrupted. Nothing I can do. Uh, People shouldn't message me when I'm teaching on Facebook. Okay, but anyway, let me continue on with the class here. That's on the website. Again, Islam encourages for us to free our prisoners of war. Okay? Islam teaches that prisoners of war should be freed. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, this hadith goes into talking about how a man was captured and he was bound to a tree. And the man was like, "What are you going to do? You're going to kill me? You're going to kill me?" But instead, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the people to free the man, and as a result, and also to ransom him. You know, to not even ransom him, to just free him. The man was so impressed at how the Prophet freed him and didn't even seek a ransom that this man ended up embracing Islam. He ended up becoming Muslim. Again, this is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to command the people. You know, when you go out, uh, to show leniency with the people and to not make the people hate you or hate Islam, because our actions, the things we do, is a form of dawah. It may encourage those people to want to embrace Islam. So that's what this hadith is about. Here is a man that the prophet set free without even ransoming him, and he ended up in becoming a Muslim. Okay. And then the next hadiths here, they speak about how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam evacuated the Jews. The Jews were allowed to live amongst the Muslims. There were three different groups of Jews, and the Prophet went into peace agreements with all three of them. But unfortunately, they all broke their agreements one by one, and as a result, the Prophet had them evacuated. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned the Jews out of Medina because one by one they broke every peace agreement that they made with the Prophet, and they all betrayed him by fighting against him with the Quraysh. Because part of the peace agreement with the Jews was that if either the Jews or the Muslims were under attack, that they would help each other. Well, they ended up violating that and fighting against the Muslims with the Quraysh. And that's what that is talking about. And as a result, they were all kicked out from that area. And Umar said that he heard the Prophet say, I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula. The Arabian Peninsula will become nothing but an Islamic state. And that's what happened. That's how Saudi Arabia became what it is today, the Muslim state that it is today. And then finally, these last hadiths here speak about how if people are guilty of being a traitor, Islam allows for their execution. Okay? And also Islam allows for the people of a fort to surrender due to on the arbitration of a just person. And this is the story here of one of the eminent companions who was killed during battle. And many of you have heard about Saud. You read the hadiths about how when Saud died, even the angels were sad, and how even the angels attended his funeral. Okay, Aisha tells us Saud was wounded on the day of the battle of the ditch, and a man from the Quraysh named Ibn al-Arika shot him with an arrow that pierced the artery of his forearm. The Prophet had a tent set up for him in the mosque so they could, look after his wounds, and the Prophet would come and ask about him. And then when the Prophet went back to the ditch to continue the battle, the angel Jibril came to him, and told him how everyone, even the angels, were sad about what had happened with Saud. And Jibril told him, you have laid down arms? By Allah, we have not laid ours down. So go fight against the Quraysh, because the angels were fighting to help the Muslims. The angels will fight with us when we're fighting a true battle in the name of Allah. So the Jibril was telling him how sad the angels were that Saud had been shot with that arrow, and they said, keep fighting because we're ready to continue to fight too. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued his fight against the Quraysh, and they surrendered at the command of the Prophet. As far as what would happen to him, the Prophet then went to where Saud was, and he asked Saud, what do you want us to do? We were victorious in this battle. What do you want us to do with the prisoners? And Saud was the one that said, those of them who can fight should be killed, and the women and children should be taken as prisoners, and their properties distributed amongst the Muslims. And that's what the Prophet did. So you learn from that hadith how it's lawful in Islam for a person, a righteous person who is fighting to be allowed to make a decision as to what should happen to the people who surrender in the battle he was fighting in. Okay, so these are the hadiths in this section addressing the rules and guidelines in warfare. And again, guys, Allah sets these rules. War is not a nice thing. That's why, again, Islam encourages us to try to negotiate to make peace. Try to make peace. Do not be so quick to jump up and fight, because war is not pretty. Lives are lost. People are captured. Property is taken. It's not a pretty thing, and it's not a nice thing. Morality is broken. Hope can be lost. So that's why, as Muslims, we should do everything in our power to keep peace with our enemies instead of being quick to fight. And on that note, we'll stop right here for today. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you a quiz to cover these hadiths, and again, I apologize on Facebook for those people on Facebook that the video stopped for them. Nothing I could do. When you start messaging me on Facebook, it cuts off the video. So I can't, I don't know why people were messaging anyway. But anyway, make sure everybody is here tomorrow. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, shalom la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa